Hi, it's Dr. Sandy Queen with Queen Homeschool Supplies, and I'm continuing my video series today on identifying and teaching to your child's learning style, which is all mentioned in my book, Learning My Way, which is available at queenhomeschool.com in the Parent Resources section. So yesterday I talked about the first learning style that we're going to discuss in this series, and that was the visual learner. Today I'm going to talk to you about the second learning style that we'll talk about, and that is the kinesthetic or hands-on learner. If you have a kinesthetic learner or hands-on learner, you are probably aware that that child needs movement. They like to move all the time. They're always wiggling and squirming, and maybe it's really hard to get them to sit and focus. And that was certainly the case for my daughter, who is a kinesthetic learner. And this was my second born child, Casey. So Casey is a kinesthetic learner, very active child. We have some old videos that we made years ago for a missions conference at our church that I was in charge of making these videos for. And I have dressed my two daughters at the time. I had three little girls. Haley was a baby. And I would dress them up in different costumes from different cultures on different days and videotape them as though I was interviewing them to see how the missionaries that came to their area changed their life. And so my little daughters, who were, I don't know, maybe 5 and 6 or 6 and 7 at the time, would pretend to be the native people of this land. And in all the videos, we like to go back and watch periodically, like I'm sure you do with old family videos as well. We see Kylie, who is the visual learner, sitting there very stoically reading the yellow tablet that I had written the script on as I'm holding it back here behind the video camera, and she's looking at it intently and just reading along, and you can kind of see that because she's visual. And then you see Casey, who's the kinesthetic learner, the hands-on learner, and she was reading it as well, but during that whole time she had to move. So you'll see a lot of this kind of stuff going on with her. She's moving the whole time she's reading. And that's what a kinesthetic child will often do when you're trying to get them to do an activity where they have to sit still. No fault of their own, that's just how they learn. They need that movement. And so you may notice that if you have a kinesthetic child, they like to be the one that's moving all the time. And so when you teach them, you may need to tweak the way that you teach them. For me, I'm looking for the book that I wanted to show you, and I don't know what I did with it. So I'm going to use a different book. Let me use the language lessons. Okay, this is Language Lessons for Little Ones, Volume 3. This one's teaching advanced phonics. So it's assuming the child can read words like cat and dog, and it's going to pick up there and go through every other phonics rule in the English language. So for with the full color pictures and all that we're known for in our books, but for my visual child going through a phonics lesson, you know, that child's going to look at the phonics lessons and we're going to go through them, and the visual child's going to hone right in on those rules. They're going to see them. They're going to memorize them by looking at them as you're talking through them. But the kinesthetic child can do those same things, but they're also going to need some movement involved. When I was teaching Casey to read, and she read very early, just like her sister before her, but I tweaked the way that I taught her because I recognized that she was a kinesthetic learner. And so for Kylie, my visual learner, I taught her by showing her the rules and explaining how those sounds sounded. And then with Casey, I did that same thing, but because she was kinesthetic, we did a lot of movement activities. Like I made this thing called the ABC Road for her. And I took a roll of white paper and I wrote on there the ABCs and drew a line in between each one, and I unrolled it on the floor, and I had these little blue plastic coasters, and I would give her a coaster and I would say, okay, Casey, put this coaster on the letter that sounds like D, like in dog, and she would run down and put it on the D, and she'd come back and wait for the next one, and I'd say, okay, now take the coaster and put it on the letter that sounds like F, like in foot, and she would run down and put it on the F. And so that bit of movement helped her. We also lived in a big 3-story colonial house at the time, and we would work on memorizing Bible verses. And one of the things I did for my visual learner was to write those Bible verses on Post-it notes and stick it on the bathroom mirror. And every time she'd be washing her hands or brushing her teeth, she would read that. She would see it, and it would be locked in her mind because she was a visual learner. But for my kinesthetic, my hands-on learner, what I did was to take one word and put it on a piece of an index card. One word from the verse, each word on a separate index card. That's what I'm trying to say. And then I would tape them on the risers of the stairs. And so as she would walk up and down the stairs, she would shout out those words from the verses, and that movement of going up and down the stairs helped it to lock into her mind. So you can see how that bit of adding that movement to the same things you want to teach really helps that kinesthetic child to grasp it. So the things you want to look for if you're thinking, maybe I have a kinesthetic learner, is it's a child that's always moving, maybe always squirming, maybe they have a hard time focusing on things that you're just trying to get them to sit still for. My kinesthetic learner would stand literally and swing one leg back and forth as high as she could while she was doing those activities where she was just being asked to sit and look at something or read something. And that helped her tremendously because she was able to focus better, integrating that little bit of movement. So that's what you want to look for a kinesthetic child, and that's what you want to integrate to help them to absorb information. So join me for the video tomorrow when I'll talk about the third learning style that we're going to discuss in this series.